Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking the Mysterious Mainframe with AppDynamics and IBM. My name is Alyssa Sarmiento and I will be the moderator today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, I am obligated to share this legal notice slide, so here's that, and now we'll continue on. And moving on, note that the console you are looking at is completely customizable. Feel free to explore the widgets that are at the bottom of your screen, and you can also move or resize any of the windows you see open by dragging the bottom right corners of each widget. This will be especially helpful during the demonstration portion of the event. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. Webinars are bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. And if you've done these things and are still experiencing issues, whether it's with sound or the screen seems frozen, please refresh your browser, as that will usually fix any console issues. And if you continue to have issues, please reach out to us through the Q&A widget that's on the left side of your screen, and I'll try to help out there. And speaking of the Q&A widget, we invite you to submit any questions you have during the webinar through there, and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Lastly, this webinar will be recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording within 24 hours. Feel free to share the recording with your colleagues. And moving on to the webinar, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Nemec, and I am the offering manager for IBM Z APM Connect offering.
Hi, this is Aaron Young. I'm also with IBM, and I am the product architect for IBM Z APM Connect.
And hello, this is Jonah Cowell with AppDynamics, VP Market Development Insights, and I work closely with the folks on the line at IBM to build this great new offering that we're going to talk about. But before I move into that and we show you some of the great new things that we've been working on here between AppDynamics and IBM, I did want to talk a little bit about the current challenges and some of the issues that are really driving the need to understand this visibility and why the mainframe is so important. So as everyone is aware, with DevOps and Agile, a lot of the importance of the smaller teams within an organization is starting to bubble up. So that change in terms of how tools are used and selected is moving from a centralized model to a decentralized model. As everyone is aware, most applications are moving, if not already have moved, towards hybrid environments where public and private cloud are becoming part of the application landscape. But that doesn't preclude the use of technologies like mainframe, which are key to driving many businesses today. As skills and folks age and change within the organization, there is definitely resource contention, especially with systems that were created previously. Most folks do tend to focus on what is new and exciting, and we tend to forget the important things underneath those that really drive our business. APM tools such as AppDynamics and many others out in the market are important. They help manage both traditional applications and these new cloud-based or hybrid applications that we're seeing in increasing numbers. Really understanding availability and performance is key, but also finding and understanding that diagnostics and the root cause. How do I understand where the problem is? How do I get the right teams involved and focus that? None of us wants to be in these war rooms with 50 people, most of whom are probably not involved with a particular problem. So the idea is to really find that key issue and who can fix it as quickly as possible. The other piece is, because of all of the new applications being built by today's organizations, the APM market is growing quickly. Gartner estimates that only about 10% of applications in the enterprise have APM applied to them. And so we can see that there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of applications where this technology can really help push them forward. And by pushing them forward, it also means fixing things faster. As I said, some great statistics here from the State of the DevOps report that Dora puts together. Really reducing downtime, because downtime really costs businesses money. That's incredibly important because our organizations are increasingly driven by digital architectures and applications. And because we don't have to bring everyone into these war room situations, it can really reduce the amount of time people spend wasting on things that are not relevant to them, and instead can be working on business critical tasks and development, for example. So what we see in typical organizations today is a lot of different siloed tools. And as you look not only at the architecture of infrastructure and applications as we've laid out here, but as you look into different siloed tools and technologies, you often find specific tools to manage each slice of the environment. So there are definitely some examples here where when you're looking at the front end or the application, folks tend to use tools that work at that layer. Once you start getting down into integration systems, whether it's a message queue or other middleware into databases, and even down into the infrastructure, we have a lot of different siloed tools and views. And the same thing can be said for the mainframe, where that team specifically looks at things in their own views specific to the relevant metrics and events that they care about. The big challenge is that when we look at the customer and the customer experience, how the end user is perceiving interacting with your company, they're spanning all of these technologies, and they all must work properly in order for that customer and the user experience to be well accepted, and the transaction with your company to perform well and have the desired business outcome for the user. So these are the challenges that we see and we hear clearly from our customers, and that's really why we at AppDynamics and IBM have come together to solve these problems. So in order to show you the key missing piece to this and hear about some of the new things we've been building, I'm going to turn this over to Nicole from IBM to share a little bit about where we've come in the last few months. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonah. He really hit home the point that I'll continue to articulate throughout the product overview and update, that we are partnering together to give our customers who still very much rely on the mainframe to achieve the volume and scale of work that they need to deliver to their customers, having that integrated into the AppDynamics workflow that they've already embraced across their distributed team is just so important, because right now they've got almost 95% of the picture there, but having that one missing piece filled in really gets them the most out of the solution that they've chose to embrace across the rest of the organization. So I'll drop in really quickly at a high level for anyone who's completely unfamiliar with the solution. IBM has embraced the concept of design thinking for building any and all products that we deliver to our customers now. And part of design thinking is designing products for specific personas. So we have a team of researchers out here who started taking a look at the individuals involved in using APM solutions and how problems are resolved right when this partnership first started. And we discovered that there were two main personas that most commonly get called into this use case that I'm about to describe for you. So we have Mickey, who is our IT ops practitioner, and you can see her view is that of an AppDynamics screen. She's responsible for the health of business applications, and she's very focused in on making the most out of AppDynamics. And then we have Jim, who's on the mainframe team. He would be referred to as a Z subject matter expert. And you can see he's got his very classic-looking mainframe tooling. In this case, it's a Megamon, but it's important to note it doesn't matter what monitoring tooling your shop is using on the mainframe. There are no dependencies on IBM's Megamon or any other monitoring tooling. But right off the bat, you can see and get a sense of just how different these two individuals are. They're working with very different tooling. They have quite different levels of expertise. And quite often we find that they aren't that aware of each other. They're probably not even in the same physical location, and they're often years apart. So Jim and Mickey, they're just not set up for success when it comes to communicating with each other. So I'll jump right into what AppDynamics looks like for our mainframe customers right out of the box without Z APM Connect. So you can see a really robust filled out AppDynamics flow map here, but the transactions are heading into the mainframe, but you can't see what happens after they enter the mainframe. You can see a little bit of detail on response time, but basically it's completely a mystery to Mickey where or what happened to that transaction, which results in a scenario that we've seen time and time again with many of our customers. Mickey gets a performance deviation alert from AppDynamics, and she can see that something on the mainframe is running slower than normal. So she needs to get to the heart of this problem quickly. She doesn't have a great relationship with the mainframe team, so she just has to go off of her best guess. Possibly the person that she last dealt with when there was a problem on the mainframe, or the individual that she has the best relationship with. But the key thing here is that it's just a guess. She has no idea where the problem is initially. So she heads over to the MQ SME, and he takes a look on his individualized tooling to see if there's a problem with his subsystem that he's responsible for. And he sees there's no problem here, you're wasting my time. He passes her off to the next SME, which happens to be the KICS SME. The KICS SME goes through a similar routine. He takes a look at his specialized tooling. He sees that there's no problem with KICS. She has the wrong person, so he passes her off to someone else where the problem might lie. He passes her, in this case, off to the DB2 SME. The DB2 SME looks at his individualized tooling. He sees, oh, the problem's with me. I'm going to go ahead and get that fixed as soon as possible. This is a very polite retelling of what most people refer to as a war room. They are often chaotic, sometimes in the middle of the night. Depending on the size of the organization, hundreds of people can get pulled on the phone, just essentially pointing fingers to say, the problem's not with me, it must be with you. So these create a lot of pain internally for the employees of a company, but also being considerate of the end user. When a war room is pulled together, that typically means something's not working, which means an end user is not having a great experience. And like Jonah mentioned, when an end user is having a bad experience, that costs the company hard dollars, but it also just generally decreases goodwill from the customer. So I will show you what AppDynamics looks like with Z APM Connect installed. You can see here that we've got transactions flowing into a number of different mainframe subsystems, KICS and IMS, and those transactions are taking another hop off into some additional subsystems, DB2, vSAN. So the level of detail here is just so much greater than what was provided before. You can see kind of into the intricacies of where a transaction is going through multiple hops on the mainframe instead of just seeing them go in with really no resolution. So I'll take us back to our same problem where Mickey gets a performance deviation alert. She can see, though, with Z APM Connect that the response is slowed on DB2. So she goes directly to the DB2 ZSME, and he's able to go to his individualized tooling, identifies the problem, makes the change, and gets it up and running as soon as possible, which helps us get to the heart of really the value that an APM solution delivers. There's faster isolation of the problem, the application is down for a shorter amount of time, and there are fewer false positives for the mainframe team. Which obviously is just a polite way of saying that there are less war rooms. And Although for the mainframe team, these can be especially painful, we know that war rooms are not just mainframe specific. Oftentimes they span across the entire distributed team when something's gone wrong. So really completing this picture of an end-to-end view of mobile to mainframe and having visibility across all pieces, it just really enables an organization to cut down on these by empowering the application owner, like Mickey, to get straight to the heart of the problem, regardless of what type of siloed tool or technology the problem may lie on. And I'll just make a note about some feedback that we got recently from the head of mainframe at one of South Africa's largest banks. We've made a really concerted effort in building out Z APM Connect to create a tool for our users that would deliver the appropriate amount of information. So previously I showed you a side-by-side of AppDynamics and a Megamon, what Mickey and our Z SME would typically be using in their individualized day jobs. And we've had some people ask, well, why don't you port all of the data, all of the mainframe monitoring data into Z APM Connect so the AppDynamics user has access to it? And this was a really interesting response from the customer that we had proposed that idea to, and she gave us a really straightforward, too much information in the wrong hands, it's going to be dangerous. So we've put in a lot of craft and care into creating a solution that has just the right amount of information. And Erin will show you in the demonstration kind of what that looks like, these specific pieces of info that Mickey can go in and grab when she sees a problem to hand over to the mainframe team so they can go in and address the problem on their own specialized tooling. Because we have never set out to create a solution that replaces mainframe monitoring tooling because it's just too complex. Not to mention the technology is very specialized. So it's important to note that we deliver just the right amount of information so our Mickeys of the world are able to work with the mainframe team without having to become a mainframe expert. So the solution became generally available to customers, our partnership with AppDynamics, just about a year ago. And initially out of the gate, we focused on support for one of the largest transaction processors, KICS, with some additional support for MQ. Since that time, we have really expanded our number of supported ZOS transaction flows, and we continue for the foreseeable future to continue to expand upon this map. So since we became generally available, like I said, about a year ago, we've done 4 quarterly drops, or we will have done 4 quarterly drops of updates to the APM Connect. And we are on a very agile quarterly delivery cycle to make sure that we are building and expanding out the capabilities of this product as quickly as possible. The mainframe is a very complicated, unique type of technology, so there are a lot of individualized flows that we see from customer to customer. So the reason that we've chosen to move very quickly on a quarterly basis is to make sure that we're able to ramp up as quickly as possible with support for those key flows that a lot of our customers are using. The focus, which I'll get into in the next slide, for the first part of the year has been expanding our support for IMS. So like I said, at the beginning of this partnership, we looked at initially supporting out of the gate a lot of KICS and MQ, with the middle and end of this year being about wrapping up our support for IMS. But we have also added some really key enhancements that just make the product generally more usable for our biggest AppDynamics customers. So in our 6.1 release in third quarter of this year, we offered 2 pieces that I'll go into a little bit more detail on: execution-based pricing and multiple controller support. If you're at all familiar with AppDynamics, you know that controllers are used to corral all of the agents together to report data. And we made this product able to support a number of different AppDynamics controllers. So for our larger customers that are needing to use multiple AppDynamics controllers, you can be rest assured that we will be able to support a number of controllers in Z APM Connect. So your data is all there, very consistent and clear. We also moved to execution-based pricing. And if you're unfamiliar with Mainframe, this is going to get a bit complicated. But the way the product was previously priced was based on the size of a customer's ZOS deployment. But we found that a number of our customers wanted to ramp up with the product as quickly as possible on some key applications. So we made the choice to move to execution-based pricing, which means that you can buy the product just for the LPARs where it might be running. So if you have some applications that you want to kind of quickly get started with Z APM Connect on, and they're only running on a few of your LPARs, you can buy just a little bit of Z APM Connect and get started monitoring those applications right away. And then once it's successful, ramp up and expand across your entire mainframe. I'll touch a little bit and go back a few slides to the flows that we are currently supporting. We are continuing throughout 2019 to expand the number of flows that we support, really focusing on some of the most widely demanded pieces of development that we see our customers asking for. So you won't see it on this chart, but coming at the end of this year will be some additional IMS support with IMS TMRA. And then we've got some really exciting support coming in the beginning of next year for IBM's ZOS Connect. ZOS Connect is an incredible product that a lot of our mainframe customers have really run with the second they've got it to really modernize their mainframes. And we've got the ability to support ZOS Connect going into KICS and IMS. So once you get started with this new technology on your mainframe, you're going to feel confident and comfortable knowing that you can have ZOS Connect monitored alongside all of the distributed parts of the puzzle that are connecting into it. We'll also be looking to add KICS transaction gateway support. And to any customers on the phone that have KICS TG that don't see it on this map, don't fret, because I know that a lot of you, when you have KICS transaction gateway, it comprises a lot of your traffic. We've heard that from the field time and time again, so we're working on getting that out the door as early as possible next year. But throughout 2019, really rounding out any other additional IMS support, so there's complete parity with our support for KICS, taking a look at how we can further support detail into DB2, and just working with our customers to make sure that they have that full end-to-end picture to their liking. So this kind of workflow that I've described with the application owner and the mainframe team collaborating in harmony is a picture that can be embraced no matter how your mainframe is set up. And before I hand it over to Aaron to take a look at the demonstration, I will just hit on two big pieces of client feedback that I think really sum up the value proposition of this product and summarize what I've been telling you about so far today. We had one customer at a large Nordic bank highlight how the mainframe was just a black box, and they had spent all of this money on an APM solution, but they felt like they were still missing a really critical piece because they couldn't truly end-to-end manage the applications that were touching the mainframe. And this integration was something that they were really excited about because they were finally able to get that view that they were so hoping to have operational inside their organization. And the same from another European customer, a little bit more focused on kind of the personal relief he felt with a solution like IBM Z APM Connect running. They were able to stop finger pointing and focus on the real problem, which, as I said earlier, it kind of has two major benefits. On the personnel side, you have less infighting, less war rooms, less time trying to defend yourself. But at the end of the day, most organizations are coming to a point where they understand that delivering a great experience for the end user is really key. So you get both of those with this solution, and that's why we're so happy to continue forward with AppDynamics and delivering a product that gets to the heart of this problem. So that's the summary of IBM Z APM Connect. I'm going to hand it over to Aaron Young to take a look at the product in action so you can really get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. So I'm going to show you a couple of demonstrations today. The first one is going to be similar to the scenario that Nicole talked you through earlier, showing a transaction slowing down in Kix and see what that looks like in a live application running in AppDynamics. And then I'll also show you another application in AppDynamics that shows some of the other subsystems and what they look like in AppDynamics. So for the first demo, I'm going to be playing the role of Mickey. So I'm the application owner who is responsible for the online banking application. And I have configured AppDynamics to alert me when my applications that I'm responsible for are not healthy anymore. And so that's what's happened in this case. I received an email that online banking is not healthy, so I've logged into AppDynamics and looked at my application view. So I can see right here that online banking is in fact no longer green, not healthy, so I will click on that to take a look at this application. So we see in the dashboard for online banking this nice topology view that AppDynamics builds based on what it discovers as far as the components involved with my application. So I can see that for online banking, this is a mobile banking type application, and we have a web tier that's servicing end-user requests as they log in and perform banking functions with this application. And this is a Linux system being monitored with an AppDynamics agent. And then this, in turn, makes calls into a web application tier, so we have a little bit more business logic running here. Again, this is a Linux system running the AppDynamics Java agent, and we can see that it has discovered that there are a couple of back-end services that it's calling. The first one is MySQL database, so we can see that there are some requests going to this database. This is kind of normal AppDynamics behavior. And then we can see that there are also calls, HTTP calls out to this Kix tier. And this is something new, right? So as Nicole showed earlier in the presentation, in a customer environment without Z APM Connect, they would have just seen a black box here, right? So they would have been able to see from the perspective of this Java code, there were HTTP calls out, but it was to kind of this unknown backend. And so with Z APM Connect installed onto the mainframe environment that's servicing this application, we're actually able to discover where those transactions are going. So we can see in this case that AppDynamics has discovered there are 4 Kix nodes, so there are 4 Kix regions here. And we're looking at what was really discovered by Z APM Connect. So we can tell based on what's coming into Kix from these instrumented applications with the AppDynamics agent on them, we're able to understand what set of application transactions are coming into Kix that are related to our online banking application. So we're able to follow those, and in this case we have 2 pairs of Kix regions. We have the web service owning regions and then the paired set of application owning regions. So we're able to follow that Kix to Kix interaction. And then we can also see that Kix is also making use of a set of other back-end subsystems on ZOS. So we can see from this nice diagram that we have calls going into DB2 on ZOS, IMSDB. Some of the transactions are reading from VSAM, and some are doing MQ interactions. So they're putting a message on a queue and waiting for a response. And so we're able to break out the time that those Kix transactions are spending in the different regions, and then also if they're making calls out to databases or MQ, we're able to show you in AppDynamics what part of the business transaction was actually spent in these various pieces on the back end. And once we're able to do this and show you kind of the details about where these transactions are going, AppDynamics does what it does best, which is not only stitching the transactions together, but also building out baselines for what is normal for your application. So over time, it learns what's typical, and when it starts to deviate, when the actual current behavior of the application deviates, AppDynamics does a nice job of pointing that out. So even at this very high-level dashboard view, I can see for our application, it looks like there's probably a problem with the DB2 calls on ZOS. But let's take a look at the business transaction health. So if I click on this, I can see a nice scorecard of the business transactions that were discovered that are part of my overall business application. So there are services that are working just fine, like logging into the application. But then I can see we actually have a lot of transactions that are slower than normal, and AppDynamics breaks down the percentage of those calls that are slow compared to normal. And we can click down onto these transactions and look at, if we look at the dashboard for this, this just helps remove some of the components and the broader overall application that are not relevant to this particular transaction. So for transfer, we can see we got rid of the MySQL database calls and some of the other backends on the ZOS side. So it's really only just the DB2 involved with this part of the application. And then if we look at the transaction score, which is a nice view to kind of see what's been happening over time with this transaction, we can see that it was behaving normally for a period of time, and then we had this period where we really got the alert from, right? So it started to behave really badly, and we can see that most of the transactions, 53% of the transactions during this time were actually very slow. And we see that not only by the color coding, but also the blue line indicates the average response time is very high. So now now that we know this looks like it's really unhealthy, we can go look at transaction snapshots. So these are specific transaction requests that are captured by AppDynamics when it's detected that they are slower than normal. So the previous data we've been looking at is really a set of averages. So we were always looking over a period of time. In the case for this demo, we've been looking at the last 30 minutes. But now with snapshots, we're really looking at individual requests. So this is a real-life end user who tried to do a transfer, and it was taking them, we can see, over 20 seconds in this case. So this is going to be a very unhappy user because their end user experience is very poor. So when we drill into one of these snapshots, we get a nice topology view again. And this time, it's, as I said, it's specific to this particular request. And we can see that AppDynamics is scoring each of the nodes involved in this transaction. And it also tells us the time spent. And we can actually see that DB2 is taking up 83%. So 16 seconds, almost 17 seconds out of the 20 seconds is actually in this DB2. So at this point in time, we actually know pretty good, even though we don't know kicks or we don't know DB2 on ZOS, we have a pretty good idea of who we need to call. So Mickey, really can stop here in a lot of cases and say, okay, I know it's the DB2 person. I have the name of the DB2. Let me figure out who's on call that I can talk to who can look into DB2. And as Nicole said, that person then can go look at their specialized tools for that DB2. So that scenario would often end right there, but I'm going to click down into the drill down on the kicks node just to see some of the details that we do collect for kicks in case you're interested in that. So I'm going to drill down. We actually have those two regions, as I mentioned, so I'm going to pick one of these and just show some of the data that's available for kicks in AppDynamics. So again, you can see the overall execution time from when this kicks region received it until completed. We can also see the kicks region, it's kicks CB05 involved. And then the URL is the kicks web service. So this is how kicks advertises this particular transaction for other parts of the organization to call. So as a kicks person, I'm going to understand, okay, this is this particular kicks web service is something I can go look up. Not only that, we do collect an additional piece of data, which is the task number. This is something specific to kicks, and it's something that's going to give that kicks SME enough information. As Nicole said, we're trying to give enough information so Mickey is not overwhelmed by very specific ZOS information, but enough that when she's talking to the kicks SME that she has enough to give that person enough data to go look at their tooling. So the task number along with the KIX transaction and the region is enough for that person to really go look in deep details into specific tools around KIX. And then as we already saw on the flow map, the other nice thing that's called out here is that we can see there was, again, almost that 17 seconds that was responsible of this 19.8 seconds is actually this call into DB2, DA1X. So again, just a nice way to see how much of this transaction time is spent in an external call. So we know it's not likely any of the business logic running within the KIX transaction, but it's this external dependency to DB2 that's really slowing down our transaction. So that's our kind of our standard demonstration that we do for our online banking application. And we built this up, as Nicole said, our initial support was really focused around KIX. So this scenario is really KIX-centric. So I'm going to flip over now to another application that we have running in our lab environment just to show you some of the other subsystems that Nicole showed you in a slide. And this is kind of what they look like in AppDynamics. So you can see in the middle, again, we have KIX. So we have this web application server again, similar to our previous scenario. And now this is making calls to several different ZOS systems with different subsystems responsible for handling those transactions. So we have KIX as before, and then what you can see on the bottom, this was support that we introduced earlier this year, and that is really being able to follow IMS transactions as they come in through IMS Connect. So we were able to discover IMS Connect subsystems and then the IMS that they're talking to service those requests. And we started out IMS support around the user-written clients, so custom clients for IMS Connect. And we are actually shipping this month support for what is shown here in this diagram, which is actually coming from a WebSphere environment. So this is WebSphere to IMS Connect via TMRA, and that's what Nicole mentioned earlier. So we're actively adding new flows to support as we work through each quarter. And then finally, I'll show you what we have up above here. And this is actually a little bit of a preview. This is something that we have in a hosted beta right now. It's not actually available in the product GA, but it's available in a hosted beta. And we're looking to work with customers for this support right now. And this is around ZOS Connect. So ZOS Connect, as Nicole said, is a way to expose the business transactions, business data that you have on the mainframe in a consistent way using a RESTful interface. So ZOS Connect will talk to different system of record types. So you can see in our scenario here, we have ZOS Connect farming out different REST requests to a couple of different subsystems. We have a KIX subsystem again, so we can see the name of that KIX subsystem, and then also we have some requests going into IMS as well. So this is kind of our initial start at building out support around ZOS Connect. And then a lot of the details that we went through in the scenario for the previous application still apply here, right? So all of the baselining and the details that you can see are there available for the other subsystems. So that is, at a high level, what Z APM brings to AppDynamics and how it looks in a live set of applications. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we will go to questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron, for the demo, and thanks to Nicole and Jonah for that great presentation. So that does take us to the Q&A portion of the event. We'll answer as many as we can in the next 10 minutes or so. And we do already have a few already that's in the queue that came in, so we'll answer those. But then feel free to just, as you think of them, feel free to just keep adding them. And if we are, for whatever reason, we run out of time or we're not able to get to them live, we'll try to reach out to you offline so that we can make sure you get the answers that you need. So let's just get started. The first question, I'll direct this to you, Nicole. So it looks like a specific flow I have is not yet covered. How can I get a sense of how soon it will be delivered?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We get this one a lot just because the mainframe, like I said earlier, is so complex and unique. So if we don't have 100% coverage for every customer out of the gate, we're not surprised. We take on a very hands-on approach, our development team and our user research team, in working directly with our customers to build and basically assess how much support they will ultimately need to get that specific flow covered. So if you see something on here that's not yet covered, or I mentioned what we're working for throughout the first half of next year, and you would like to add another one into the mix, just feel free to reach out to the product team directly. You can contact myself. It's nicole.nemec@ibm.com, and I will get you in touch with the right individuals to start those discussions to make sure that we get you all the coverage that you need.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. The next question, will direct this to Aaron. Can you talk a little bit more about the install and architecture of the product?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are three main components of Z APM Connect. There are a set of data collectors. So those are the pieces of code that run on the mainframe, and they determine if those transactions tracked or not and collect timing information about those transactions. So those are collectors. And then we have what we call a container that runs one instance per LPAR, and the container's responsibility is to take all of these events that are being generated by the different data producers and collect them and forward them off the platform. So those two components are a normal ZOS SMPE install, a straightforward installation, and then there is a third component that is off-platform. And that's our transaction tracking gateway. And what the gateway does, it takes all of those events from the different ZOS containers. You just need one gateway, even if you have multiple LPARs running the APM Connect. And that gateway takes all of those events and correlates them and then puts them into a format that can be understood by AppDynamics, and it sends that data along to the AppDynamics controllers, and that way you see that nice end-to-end view that you saw in the demo.
Oh, great. Thank you, Aaron. The next question, another one for you, Aaron. Are there any prerequisites for installing Z APM Connect?
Sure, yeah. So we have very simple prerequisites. We do require ZOS 2.1 or later. And then depending on the subsystems you are monitoring, we do have versions that we require. So if you're interested in monitoring KICS, it has to be a 4.2 or later, IMS version 14 or later. And if you have MQ in that KICS flow that we support, that needs to be at version 8 or later. So really it's just about the things we're monitoring as far as versions, as far as prerequisites. There really is no additional software middleware required. So there's no there's not a separate database that you need installed or anything like that. It's pretty much just recent versions of the middleware that you actually want to monitor. That's it.
Great, thank you. We got a few variations of this next question, so I'll direct this one to you, Jonah. So how is the product licensed and purchased? Is it through AppDynamics or IBM? Can you elaborate on that, Jonah?
Sure, Alyssa, thanks. Appreciate those that asked the question as well. The solution is actually licensed from IBM. It is an IBM product, but it will consume some APM licenses. So there's a calculation in terms of the size of the mainframe LPARs that you're monitoring. in terms of the value units, and then it uses some APM licenses. But this is an IBM developed technology. It's an IBM product. So most of the licensing is through IBM. If you work with a reseller that sells IBM and AppDynamics, you can buy the whole thing from a single person as well. So happy to work with you on that. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonah. Okay, the next question we have, I'll direct this to Aaron. How quickly do you support new versions of ZOS and associated subsystems?
Sure, thanks for the question. Yeah, we try to do day one support as much as possible, so we do get early versions of the operating system and subsystems in lab environments typically, and we do run on those. With ZOS-based subsystems, upward compatibility tends to be very good, so it's mostly just a test on our part to verify that we can support those newer versions.
Great, thank you. Probably have time for just a few more questions, and so just looking at what we have in the queue, we won't be able to get to everybody, so I apologize, but we'll definitely reach out offline. But we do have time for a few more. So this next one is for you, Nicole. What are some of the priorities for the roadmap of the product?
Yeah, a lot of it is kind of what I just described. We're really focused on making sure that our support for IMS is just as robust as the support we have for KICS today, but also expanding into a variety of new subsystems and new technologies that we're seeing our customers implement as they work to keep their mainframe modernized, like support for ZOS Connect. So our priorities are very much driven by our users, but we're just going to continue to build out the product and make it robust in our support for all subsystems that touch the frame.
Okay, great, thanks. This next question, I think it would be good for Jonah, but although if Nicole or Aaron want to step in, feel free. It's what differentiates AppDynamics and IBM's monitoring partnership versus other APM solutions on Z?
Yeah, definitely. So the goal in partnering with IBM was not only to bring in the best expertise available on the mainframe, but to build a very lightweight product. And there's actually a couple of other questions in the queue specifically asking about overhead. We built this solution in order to minimize that and provide the visibility necessary to isolate the problems. So exactly what Nicole spoke about earlier is how do you identify the issue? What is the impact? Which subsystem is the culprit for the issue? And that was our main goal, not providing you with tons and tons of data on the mainframe side, but just isolating that problem quickly and efficiently. Aaron, did you want to chime in a little bit more on overhead in the testing that the team has done there?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we have done extensive performance and scalability testing. We know our customers run very large transaction volumes through the mainframe environment, and we want to make sure the solution scales for that and doesn't increase utilization of CPU on the machine to an unacceptable amount. So we've done a lot. So it does vary workload to workload, of course. So what we see as far as IMS versus KICS, there is some variability, but we try to keep it down kind of bare minimum. We do see kind of one of our go-to workloads. We see about, and this really depends on how many transactions come in that are tracked. I want to make sure that's understood. So if there are KICS transactions, for example, that are started from an application that has no AppD monitoring on them, we do not track those transactions. So we are really just looking for continuing out the AppDynamics visibility. So there's going to be a subset of transactions that run that are AppDynamics instrumented, and we do track those, and we do see about a 1% overhead per 1,000 transactions per second.
Great, thanks, guys. Just on the topic of overhead, as Jonah mentioned, there's a few other questions on it. So Aaron, what is the overhead or percent of resource consumption of running these components on the LPAR?
Sure. Yeah, I think I just actually answered that in the previous one. But if folks have specific questions about that, they can follow up with us. It is going to vary workload to workload in your environment, so we're happy to have those conversations offline.
Okay, great. Thanks. I think we have time for maybe just one more question. Let me just. Okay, this one will probably be the last one. Does Z APM agent automatically monitor MQ on MF? I think that will be either for Aaron or Nicole.
I'll take that one. So what we support today is it's really around the transaction servers on the mainframe, KIX and IMS. And today we have support for KIX transactions that are initiated from MQ. That's one of the possible routes into KIX that we support. So we don't have, I wouldn't say we have like full MQ monitoring on the mainframe side. It's really about which transactions are coming into the transaction managers, and if they come in via MQ, we do support.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aaron. And so as we are about to reach the top of the hour, that does conclude the Q&A portion of the event. So as I mentioned earlier, for those that we weren't able to answer your question live, we will definitely answer offline. So you will probably hear from me. And so just really quickly before we close, I wanted to just, for those, for the audience, you do have a Resource Center widget. If you guys want to go to any of those, there's a few links on there around the Z APM Connect, as well as if you wanted to schedule a demo, you could sign up for that as well. And the screen will change for you once we do close this webinar. So if you wanted to click through to that, now would be a good time because once we close, it's going to refresh and go to a survey. So just really quickly before we close, I want to just ask our presenters first, thank you guys so much. And if you guys have any closing thoughts before we officially end the presentation. Jonah?
No, I'm good, but thank you very much for joining, and we look forward to answering all of your questions.
Great, thanks. Nicole, any other closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Jonah said, and I just want to drive home that we're a really hands-on product development team. So if we'll follow up with the questions that we received in the queue, but you won't be troubling us at all if you follow up with any other specific questions or just general thoughts that you have. Like I said, you can reach out to me very easily. It's just nicole.nemec@ibm.com. And if you have questions for Aaron, I can forward those along to him as well. So I hope to hear from you soon, and thanks again for taking the time to talk or to listen to us today.
Awesome, thanks. And Aaron, any last final words for today?
I just want to say thanks everyone for joining, and we are happy to get into a deeper technical discussion. A lot of these questions we're heading kind of that direction, so we're happy to set up some time and have some one-on-one discussion, talk about the product in detail.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. You guys did great in your presentation, and thank you to the audience for spending some time with us today. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.